Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. And this is Love the Afrobeat Music Talk Radio, your number one African Caribbean online radio. We are streaming live on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, well, what have you. So, folks, we are here this morning. As usual on this program, we come to talk about what ails Africa, where Africa is going, and what Africa needs to do, and where Africa should be headed, and how. There's so many questions that appropriately we may be able to put on the table for discussion. And today, we know what actually is happening in Africa right now. There's so many tensions, especially on the western coast of Africa. Africa has endured so many tragedies. And sometimes I look at it from the point of view and from the angle of, as we've been discussing on this program, we have leadership crisis. And there's no doubt about it. We've seen the ins and the outs of things, the good and the bad, that could be measured and the problems solved. And I don't think there's an end in sight with what we have to do. Of course, so many years after colonization, if there's any word like that, we are still enduring some vestiges of colonialism. Just like how Dr. Kwame Nkrumah said in one of his speeches, he says, the next stage of colonialism is going to be more brutal than the first. And we are experiencing it right now, where brothers and sisters are pitted against each other. And we don't seem to see that at the end of the day, we are Africans. And if we are Africans, we need to solve our own problems. We don't need to go anywhere else, just like in our family structures. When we have problems, we solve them ourselves. But when it comes to us, we are proxied. So if I tell you there's a lot of leadership in crisis, I mean, we have leadership in crisis in Africa. That's what I mean. We have resorted to depend on outside forces to solve our problems for us. We have people who don't believe their Africanness, how rich our cultures, our traditions, everything about us, who don't treasure it. Left to them alone, if they were of a different color, yes, so be it. They would accept that. But you see, today's African youth are saying that enough is enough. We have seen the testimony out there in Guinea, in Niger, in Chad, in Burkina Faso, Mali. You see, with all these countries, what do we see? The common denominator there is France, a colonial country, which has dominated the politics and the ways of life of these countries, not only in the West, all the French colonized countries in Africa. I wouldn't say Francophone Africans. They are countries. Yeah, they happen to speak French, but they have their own dialects. These are some of the vestiges of colonialism that has got to be, thrown out the window. Because if the president of China goes to Ghana, Nigeria, he doesn't speak English. Not that he doesn't speak it or he doesn't understand it. He speaks it clearly. But to be who he is, to identify his Chineseness, he speaks the language. Mandarin, could be Mandarin, Cantonese, Fuzhou, Toisan, and all the other languages in China that he or she may be speaking. So this is just to say that we've heard that there was a coup, a military coup, change of government in the People's Republic of Niger in July. As Niger is part and parcel or a member of the Economic Community of West African States, aka Ecowas, some members in the Ecowas team, Nigeria, the Ivory Coast, Senegal, and Ghana is just waffling back and forth. Oh, we don't know where the Ghanaian community or the Ghanaian leadership is standing, where they are standing. They have threatened to go and reverse the coup d'etat in Niger. Why? Your guess is as good as mine. And who prompted them to do that? Who did it? And this is one thing that we've got to sit back and analyze it. They failed. ECOWAS failed in Sierra Leone. ECOWAS failed in Liberia. So why do they think they can be successful in Niger? Is it warranted? I don't think so, personally. And this is my personal opinion, not the opinion, yes, of the radio station. Sometimes we have to speak truth to power. Yes, Yuri Hutchison. Yes, Yuri, my brother, how you doing? Yes, thank you for joining. Where does Nana Akufo-Addo stand? You see, we are not, the youth of Africa are not going to sit back to be fooled once more. Let me give the listeners and you watching us about a brief history of the ECOWAS. You see, ECOWAS was inaugurated in Nigeria on the 28th of May, 1975, and was at that time hailed as a critical breakthrough in efforts to institute a framework for economic cooperation and integration that embraced the entire sub-region. In essence, folks, they were supposed, or the organization was supposed to take care of how to give meaning to the richness, the natural resources, to put it to use to benefit the people in the sub-region. And today, if anything is good to go by, go to any West African, or many of these countries, Nigeria. I'm so surprised that Nigeria has taken the lead in going to intervene in Niger. My brothers and sisters in Nigeria, the whole operation is bound to fail. It's bound to fail because, you know what, let's look at the ethnic structure in Mali and Nigeria. There are Hausas there, there are Zambrambas there, there are Fulas there. And does President Tinubu think that the brothers in Nigeria who are Hausas will pick up arms and go and kill or fight their brothers in Niger or in the sub-region, I'm sorry. It's neither here nor there. Nigeria is bereft with deep, for so many years, corruption. Has this been taken care of? I don't think so. I don't think so. Has the Boko Haram situation been erased? Is it over? I don't think so. If it is, I don't know about it. Maybe somebody will have to call in at 437-778-3299, 437-778-3299, and tell me whether the Boko Haram situation in Nigeria is all but over. I don't think so. I was expecting our brothers and sisters, the leadership, to sit back and say, whoa, let me look at it from an angle where I do not destabilize the region. God so good, all the skirmishes, all the violence, the Sahel, the Islamists, all these kind of things that has been bandied around, is happening in Niger and all these places. But you see, we have to be very careful. In Guinea, for instance, let me go back to Guinea. When the ex-president, the so-called civilian elected president, Alpha Conde, was manipulating the system to run for a third term, Ecowas was nowhere to be found. The so-called leaders of Ecowas didn't warn him. Don't do it, because you have to go by the constitution of the country. A lot of skirmishes are going through, the same thing are going through some countries in West Africa, in the sub-region. And where do we find Ecowas condemning them? But when soldiers, I'm not a supporter of any coup, no way. But one thing we have to understand is that the family, or the families of the soldiers, buy from the same market where things are exorbitantly high. They all buy it there. They are Nigerians. After all, who told us that a democracy, this kind of democracy, is suitable for Africa, where people buy votes? When all these things are happening before elections in any African countries, and we see it glaringly in newspapers, print media, electronic media, that MPs and people are buying votes and bribing people, nobody says anything. But when the die is cast, and everything else goes asunder, then we start to complain. If there was ECOWAS, if ECOWAS could have, put together a force, a military force, the carnage in Sierra Leone, the deaths, the mutilations in Sierra Leone wouldn't have happened. Liberia, look at these two countries. They are still going through the aftermath of these wars, civilian wars. So we have to be very careful. It is quite serious, and we have to be very careful with respect to the actions that the so-called ECOWAS leaders are trying to inflict upon the sub-region. We have to be very careful. In the Ivory Coast, we saw what happened in the Ivory Coast the elections, which even landed the president, the ex-president, at The Hague. You see, African leaders have not been made to account for the mismanagement of their economies. I'm restricting myself to West Africa. I'll repeat. Ecowas was launched in Lagos, Nigeria on May the 28th, 1975. And at the time, it was hailed as a critical breakthrough in efforts to institute a framework for economic cooperation and integration and embrace the entire sub-region. Are we better off since 1975? All these leaders may have to, if everything was equal, they should be in jail. Because you go to a typical African country, water for the people to drink is a problem. Roads, hospitals are all not functioning, and yet they have the temerity, the audacity. When something is happening in somebody else's country, they don't look at where they are, but rather they want to go and reverse a change in government. It's up to Malians to solve their problems. I mean, Nigerians to solve their problems. You see, from where I sit, I strongly believe that if they are able, I mean the leaders, if Ecowas, the leadership, if they are able to overturn this coup d'etat, it means nobody should dare. So that's going to entrench the positions of these people, the ruling elite. But mind you, the youth of Africa, where Captain Traore, he's 35 years old. If you go to Chad, President Idris is what, 39? You look at all these four young men, they are young people. And they are vowing to tell the youth of Africa that, you know what, you can create your own green pastures right here. You don't have to go through the Sahara Desert to go and die in the Mediterranean Sea. And this is what we are talking about. This is what the ECOWAS leadership should be talking about the fact that their children are dying in the desert, on the desert. Their children are dying in the Mediterranean Sea. And what have they done about it? Nothing. And yet, they think they have what it takes to go and reverse an event in another country, that is Niger. Well, I'm joined right now by my brother, a staple of this program, John Benjamin Daniels. He's in Accra, Ghana. JB, welcome to the program.
Thank you, sir.
I think you're muted. Yes, I think you're muted. You're muted still. Well, JB is muted and yeah, now.
Am I muted?
No, I can still hear you. I cannot still hear you. Maybe you may have to go out and come back. Yes, folks, you are listening to Love Me African Music Talk Radio, your number one African Caribbean online radio. And this program is Today's Africa. We come your way every Saturday. Today's Africa. 11 we are missing a lot of esteemed panelists. Dr. Francis Impindu, Cynthia Chirinda, and now we have our brother, JB Daniels with us. JB, it feels like we not getting your voice. Try it again. Most probably we'll be able to hear you.
Are you not getting me?
It seems we are not hearing you, JD. It is maybe you may have to go out and come back, and
Okay.
it should be fine. We still cannot hear you. Okay, go ahead. Yes. Yeah, JB will be joining us in a moment. Folks, I'm so incensed with respect to the fact that this is happening in West Africa. I hope the leadership are going to be thinking twice about this sort of intervention. And let us look at it from another angle too. What has France done? It's so interesting, it's so funny. If France can tell us that they will not respect the laws of the new government because they signed a contract or an agreement with an old government, oh, that's very interesting. France is not going to abide by a law by the new government that they will not withdraw their troops or they will not leave. As a matter of fact, the government, the new Nigerian government in Niger has ordered the France or the French ambassador to leave the country. And France is saying, no, we have signed a deal with the old government, and so we are not going to allow them to leave. How dare France? France, please. Africa for Africans and the youth of Africa today are saying enough is enough. We now welcome my brother, JB Daniels. He's in Accra. JB, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Yeah. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you loud and clear. You've been listening to my diatribe with respect to the Nigerian and Ecowas situation that has been bestowed upon us by the leaders, some leaders in West Africa, Nigeria, for instance, Senegal, the Ivory Coast, to intervene. Maybe there may be other countries to intervene in Niger to restore the old regime. Your take on that, from where you sit in the sub-region. Go ahead, please.
Yeah. Honestly, some of us believe that the coups are becoming too many in West Africa. But hey, wait a minute. What is bringing the coup d'etats in our area? Bad governance, despotic governments or presidents who want to extend their stay by extending the position of their countries. And of course, in the French West Africa, former French colonies, you notice that the system, the colonial agreements and payback agreement that France made with those countries is really biting them. If you go to Niger, Mali, Burkina Faso, there's so much poverty there. But like you rightly said, the least they control the resources of the country, the money, everything. So they manage to survive. But how about the ordinary person in those countries who has nobody to support by way financial to give financial support? It's a very serious one because this Niger issue, you know, the mines controlled by France and the US have an interest in. Their mind is since the 1960s or 50s. But look at the situation of Niger. And of course, when the coup took place, Ecowas, our regional body, bloc, the leadership met in Nigeria, and they said they were going to intervene militarily. Intervene militarily. Most of the West African countries have their economic circumstances after COVID and after the Russia-Ukraine war. Their economies are nowhere to write up home about. My own country, Ghana, we have just gone to a debt exchange supervised by the IMF. And the Bank of Ghana supported the government to be able to manage the financial affairs of the country. Opposition is mad about those situations. So has Ghana got enough money to support the West Africa force or the intervention in Niger? But I'm happy because for the past 1 week, it looks like Ecowas is backtracking. Now they are talking about giving the diplomatic endeavor some chance. Even though the Kupis have come out to say that they're going to stay on for 3 years. Ecowas is saying the 3 years is too much. And I'm sure negotiation and the diplomatic efforts are being pursued. So yeah, if you ask me, all the difficulties that we are having is the fact that we don't have good leaders in West Africa. And because of the misrule and the mismanagement, our economies are not something that you can write home about. And if your country's economy is bad, how do you get development? And how will the countrymen or the people who live in that country survive? So it's a very serious problem. I would think that instead of going to waste more money to fight in Niger to install the deposed president, they should use the monies to do serious programs of agric education, health, and what have you, for their citizens. Because if you cannot predict a war. Russia attacked Ukraine, and I thought initially they thought they were going to make a mincemeat of Ukraine. Now this thing has dragged on over a year now. It's the resources that both countries are losing. And if West Africa go into with their threats, they are going to expend resources, the resources that we need for our development. So my take is that I hope in the final analysis, common sense will prevail, and the diplomatic efforts will take the center stage of this whole endeavor. But it's a lesson to the African leaders, especially the West African leaders. Manage your countries well. If you manage your countries well, definitely the Kupis will not even have the appetite to intervene. But if you don't manage your countries well, then you should expect that these illegal interventions will take place. And once the coup takes place and you don't intervene within the next 1 week or so, and they do their proclamation, it means they are illegal. After the proclamation replaces the constitution of the country. Because they definitely, when they come into power, they throw away the constitution of their land and make their own proclamation. Once you sit down for them to make a proclamation, it means they have got legal status. And as a legal entity or country or government, they can ask for support from any other country. So the whole intervention situation is so complex. I hope the West African leaders will go back to the drawing board and look at the problem again. Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you, JB. And you are listening to Love Be Afrobeat Music Talk Radio, your number one African Caribbean online radio, and the program is Today's Africa. And those of you watching us on LinkedIn, YouTube, Facebook, well, you know what? You know what to do. Subscribe to this channel and join us every Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And to those of you listening to us on the radio, louderradio.live, well, this is a discussion that needs to be put on the table there. You said, JB, you said something that I'm interested in. You see, after the proclamation, they become a legal entity as a government. So, yes, today, or was it yesterday, France, with all its temerity and audacity, is saying that they are not going to sort of allow their ambassador to be expelled because they have an agreement with the previous government. So as a result of that, they are not going to leave, get the ambassador to leave. Your take on that? Because let me go back there again. Also, it means that anybody at all can go to France for contracts and all those kind of stuff. You can do whatever you want. Enough is not. Don't they understand it? You see, during the COVID time, during COVID, or let me even put it this way, the 3 uranium mines in Niger is not owned by the government. It's owned by entities in France. You know, uranium powers the nuclear plants in France. And one thing that riles me, that gets me angry sometimes, or ticked off, I would say ticked off sometimes, is due to the fact that if you go into the mainstream media, everybody goes about Niger is one of the poorest countries on the face of the earth and all those kind of stuff. Wait a minute. If your country has a potential vast array of oil in the ground, you have gold, you have uranium, you have lithium, you have every other mineral that has not been tapped. Do you call yourself a poor country? No, Africans are not poor. Africans are poor, but Africa, let me put it this way, let me rephrase it. Africa is not poor, but Africans are poor. And the question is why? Leadership, like you said before. France was, extricating gold during the COVID when everything was down. They were sending gold to France. And yet somebody has got the right and the temerity, the audacity to come and say that Niger is poor. So now this is where we are right now. Like you said rightly, these countries, these leaders will have to look at themselves before they take any adventure, because they failed miserably. The same organization failed miserably to mediate the situation in Sierra Leone, in Liberia. And why do they think they will be successful this time around? Your guess is as good as mine. The floor is yours, please. Go ahead. You're muted, please. You're muted.
Yesterday, I read a report to the effect that the spokesman for the Kremlin, the Russian government, is saying, so far as they are concerned, with the demise of the Wagner paramilitary force or the private force, they are taking it that Wagner is an illegal entity.
Mm-hmm.
Which means that Russia does not support them any longer or recognize them any longer. But I'm told Wagner is all over West Africa. But the last time I heard that they have even entered Niger. And you know the role Wagner played in Ukraine. They were more incisive than the Russian army. So if you are going to engage in a war with a government that has already done the legal proclamation, who can invite any other entity or government to come to their aid, you see that this war will be protracted. But everyone leaders believe that, oh, this war, like the Russians thought about Ukraine, this war, when we get in over 3 days, we'll finish everything. Wars don't go that way. With the present system that any war is internationalized, the Russians will take one side, the Americans and the Europeans will take another side. Then the West Africa, of course, I know West Africa will support France. But the issue is, why are they not talking about the circumstances that brought about the coup? The economic management and the desire of that former president to stay in power. So for me, I believe that in Sierra Leone, it was a civil war. In Liberia, it was a civil war. The various groups were fighting each other and causing carnage. Have you heard that there's any carnage in Niger?
No.
Have you heard that there's a civil war in Niger? Fine. The insurgency is up country. And they are in Burkina Faso, the Sahel, and all those countries. The governments, they are doing their best to curtail that, but they have not succeeded. But the little portion of Niger that has no peace, you sit in Ecowas and you are going to destabilize that side too. I believe that the Ecowas leaders should think twice about that endeavor. But I'm happy, like what I told you initially. Now it looks like diplomacy is taking a front burner, and if they negotiate well, something good will come out of this impasse.
But JB, diplomacy was there right from the beginning, and they didn't take it. You see, I think just like one general, as a General Brigadier Nuno Mensah said, it's not a cakewalk. It's not going to be a cakewalk because the terrain, everything out there, is not the same as you have in any other part of West Africa. But the fact of the matter is that there shouldn't be. You see, the problem is that we are so accustomed to the fact that if there's a problem, we go and call uncle from outside. The black man is capable of making mistakes and correcting them. In this particular case, the Nigerian army, whose families buy from the same market, they use the same roads, they are Nigerians. I don't support any coup. But it's not up to any outside force, any outside country to dictate what people should do. Yes, I got something from Brother Sorrell. He says, are you saying that France is overruling the African country that expelled their diplomat? They are refusing to leave. Yes, France is refusing to let the diplomat leave because they say they signed an agreement, military or whatever agreement that they signed with the previous government, still in their minds prevails. They are mistaken. They are very mistaken. Because you see, they want that kind of a confusion around in the sub-region, so that when things are in chaotic state, they can continue to exploit the resources of Niger, just like how they've been doing over the years. And I can't even fathom The fact that France is not ashamed. Today, we have 14 French speaking. I don't even want to use that word. French speaking. I should use the word French colonized countries in Africa, whose assets are in the Bank of France, financial. And if they want money to go and develop their own countries, they are given to them as loans. And you come and tell me that you are refusing. Enough is enough is enough. The younger people, the youth of Africa are saying they can make their own green pastures there by developing the resources that they have, that God has given them to develop their countries. Hundreds of years, exploitation continuing. My mother once said, everything that has a name has got an expiry date. And we are seeing it right in front of our eyes. The world is changing as fast as we can. You know, they sought to get the airspace of Algeria to attack Niger. Algeria said, no, if you do that, we are also going down to Niger to protect the Nigerian government. Now they've spoken with Tunisia. I don't know the outcome, but you see, what killed the elephant? In African proverbial situations, we have something. What killed the elephant is the ant. The ant killed the elephant because the ant was able to go through the trunk of the elephant and maul it to death. Today's world is different. And I applaud the new African personalities that these young men in Africa, in these countries, are doing. Let me cite an example. After the coup in Guinea, and I said it before, you see, when there's a problem there, when a fellow ruling elite is making a mistake in their countries, Ecowas, African Union, whatever, doesn't say anything. Right now, as I speak, I will digress a little bit. Let's go to the Central African Republic. The president right now is trying as much as possible to change the constitution so that he can go for the third, or maybe the fourth, maybe the fifth, maybe the sixth time. They have a constitution, they are manipulating it. And when people pick up arms and say, it's enough, we cannot allow this. Now, we have the AU looking at it. We have ECOWAS looking at it. We have all the regional bodies looking at it. They are not saying anything. It has gotten to a point where we have to be responsible for the actions that our governments take. And if they don't do it right, the citizens have got every right to say, enough. And whoever told us that going through the ballot box, that's always tainted, is the right governance kind of structures for Africa. What is good for the goose must be good for the gander. JB, take it up from there, please. Go ahead, JB. JB is in a warm country, but he's still frozen. And you're listening to Love Afrobeat Music Talk Radio, your number one African Caribbean online radio. Thanks for joining us and watching us on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I'm just looking.
Go ahead, please. Technology. JB is now frozen. And I hope he warms himself up. Well, he's going up. He'll come back. You're listening to Love Afrobeat Music Talk Radio. You know what? The topic today is ECOWAS and Niger. Which way forward? Which way forward? My simple answer is leave the people of Niger alone. That's the way forward. for them to resolve their issues. After all, in our countries, in our family structures, in our homes, when we get problems, even with our neighbors, we resolve them amicably. You see, JB was talking about Wagner and others. Yeah. There has been mercenary outfits in the Iraq war. There have been mercenaries all over the globe. So what makes the Russian one different? Left me alone. All those mercenaries, all those people operating in Africa militarily and exploitatively should leave Africans alone and let us resolve our problems. We are capable of making mistakes and correcting them, and the time is right now. There's no two ways about it. The time is right now for the youth of Africa to look ahead and say, look here, we can make our green pastures right here in Africa by making sure that the ruling elite understand our plight. Good pipe-borne drinking water, good roads, fertilizers to cultivate, serious corruption investigation and prosecution of people who steal billions of dollars from the coffers, and they always go scot-free. That is the problem of Africa. It's only in Africa where somebody, a politician, will go and steal and come back to run and win the elections. Why? Because they take the advantage of the fact of, I'm not talking about illiteracy, political illiteracy. Yes, I can, you may permit me to use that word. We've discussed situations like this where we say democracy is not all that bad, but we can develop our own governance systems to benefit us as a people. Colonialism has made us right now to come back fighting very hard. I think this is the beginning, because Africans are rebelling right now. We are saying enough is enough. Leave us alone. Today we are being told that certain parts of the globe are adept, attracting Africans. But the question that we have to ask ourselves is, how has Africa benefited from it? Whether it's China, Russia, Germany, the United States, Ecowas, the EU or whatever. How has Africa benefited from this? The continent of the future, estimatedly, with all the papers that I've read, by 2050, this continent will be there. Because right now, we have an average age in terms of our human resources between 21 to 25 years. So Africa is the youngest continent right now, full of potential. It's been there before. And we are not ready to continue the same old, and the same old, and the same old. The proxies who are leading the West African states, who are thinking of intervening in Niger, should think twice, because JB, you just said that now they are backtracking. Yes, they have to. Somebody might have told them that. Backtrack, because once you start it, it's going to spread like bushfire around the sub-region. JB, the floor is yours, please.
Yeah. I was going to say that in the AU and ECOWAS constituting document, they said there's no interference in the internal affairs of each other's countries. So that if a government is in Ghana and is misruling, Ecowas cannot enter and interfere. But if you sit down for that government to change the constitution and misrule, then you said that, oh, for this one, the soldiers overthrew it, so we can now intervene. So I mean that arrangement of intervention, there's a problem there.
Yeah, that's
because right. It's not in the ECOWAS. It's not in the ECOWAS constitution document or whatever. Yeah, constitution or whatever they call it. That you should interfere. When you say that there's no interference of each other's affairs, internal affairs. So when they were misruling, when there was a bad government, you look on. When the presidents were trying to change the constitution to extend their stay, you look on. Mm-hmm. Now the soldiers come in, and you say we are going to. So the whole thing is a joke. The whole thing is a joke. But anyway,
you think it's a joke?
It's not just.
You think it's a joke? But let's look at it from this angle. That don't you think monies or they were being pressured by outside forces? Because we have a lot of proxies, people ruling the countries as if they love the countries. Yeah. Don't you think that they were being pushed to do that? And being un-African, I don't see the reason why they should do the bidding of whoever was pushing them. That's my whole point.
Yeah. So the signs were on the walls that some big brother somewhere were pushing them. And maybe they were promised some arms and some dollars, $1 or $2. But they forgot that this enterprise is a war. When you start a war, you will not know how much money you are going to spend or spend on it until you go in. And if you go in and the war becomes protracted, how are you going to do it? How are you going to manage it? And if there's a spillover of Nigerians coming to the other West African countries, whose economies are not in good shape now, as I speak with you. So it's a very difficult scenario that we are looking at. I hope that what we are hearing, that now they put the diplomatic endeavors in the front burner is true. Because after the military intervention, it should be the last resort after exhausting all other options. Because West Africa is not prepared for war. And you know, with all these insurgencies, activities in the north of Niger, Burkina Faso, Togo, and what have you, Mali. If you go and start a war right now, then you are giving them a field day. Because they know that you cannot have your attention on the Niger war as well as fighting the insurgencies. So, where I sit, I believe that this enterprise of we are going to invade Niger is the right option for West Africa, for ECOWAS. And yes, we all don't like coup d'etats. They destabilize the countries, and you will know how they are going to manage affairs after the destabilization. But well, at least, as I mentioned to you earlier, they have sat down for them to do their proclamation as the legal rulers of Niger. So now they can invite anybody. Russia. The last time I heard a news item that Russia is saying, "Oh, they are ready to support Niger if they have to. I mean, if the government in place invites them." And I think Mali and other Burkina Faso, yes, and others too, I said they are ready to send their military. I think some of them have already sent their military to support them. So why do you want to disturb the honestness? Destabilize the West Africa sub-region upon all our economic crisis, difficulties. I think our leaders should think twice and give us peace.
Yeah,
because
they should.
At this stage, you tell us you are now trying to put things in place to better the economy. We support you. Better our economic first so that we can see development. Don't bring any unplanned war because a big brother is asking you to go to war. So when will Africans think for themselves?
Yeah.
Africans,
Yeah.
when shall we think for ourselves?
That's right.
It's so disgraceful. Yeah.
Very,
it's so disgraceful.
I like that word. Yes, I like what you said. It's shameful, disgraceful, and these leaders shouldn't be in power. They should be thrown out. Because you see, if you come to look at it, I think they backtracked because the deadline was set for August the 6th, and today is the 26th of August, 20 days ago. So I think somebody is telling them, once you do that, once you start the campfire, you cannot stop it. And look at it, the tribal makeup. In Niger, there are Fulars there, there are Hausas there, okay? There are other ethnic groups who have brothers and sisters in all the other countries out there. You think there's going to be some mutiny? They are not going to do that, despite what it is, because sane minds are speaking out against this. So I think maybe they are ashamed of maybe putting in place what they thought about. And it's so interesting to know that. I'm chuckling because it's so funny, to say the least. The Peace and Security Committee of the African Union in Addis Ababa disagrees with ECOWAS's intentions. The Peace and Security Committee of the African Union doesn't support what the ECOWAS leadership are contemplating. This goes to tell you that, you know what, when it comes to the nitty-gritty of things, now we have to make people understand that there's no negotiation. We cannot negotiate our African personalities. We have to take into consideration that we've been pillaged. Our resources have been taken up. And it's got to a time that we have to sit up and not waste money on military hardware. You don't have the money to build roads, to build infrastructure, and yet you have money to embark on an adventure. I call it an adventure. Because most of these so-called generals and all those, how many wars have they been to? All those kind of stuff. I don't think they themselves, the military leadership, believe in this. It's an adventure. And with Ghana, for instance, I don't know where the Ghanaian government stands on this. I hope you are in Ghana, you should be able to tell me. Because I don't hear a lot more about the stance of the Ghanaian government, apart from the fact that they had the meetings in Ghana. Your take on it and your final submission, please.
Yeah. In Ghana, Theo, the general consensus is that, I mean, when you hear that, you listen to the discourses on television and radio, in the newspapers, the general consensus is that Ghana is not ready, upon all our economic difficulties, to go to war in Niger.
Hallelujah.
And I suspect, I mean, some religious leaders have come up already. Some religious leaders, some chiefs, I mean, some civil society organizations to have come out that Ghana is not ready for war. We have our dire economic situation to contend with, to solve. So you cannot go and waste any more money, go and waste any human resources in Niger. Rather, we should use the little money we have, the human resources that we have, to develop our country.
Yes, yeah. Yes. Yeah, we have another submission by Surreal Media. It says France is double dipping. Oh, you bet. Working with the G7, G20, UN, and backdooring BRIC, benefiting from the African countries' economies, trade with Russia, playing the sanction game. Putin doesn't trust France. Who trusts France right now? Because the fact of the matter is that it is very annoying if France is saying that, well, they signed agreements with the previous government, so they are not going to abide by the rules and regulations of the new government. I'm sorry, Mr. Macron, think again. Think again. The new breed of African leaders, the young leaders, have already sounded, or even with Mr. Macron, with every trip that you've been to in Africa, they've educated you as to their intentions, as to what France has done to their economies. I think it's about time that the French-speaking African countries come out of the CFA zone, create their own currencies. At least this is where the world is going right now. The unipolar world is breaking apart. Africa for Africans. Africa doesn't need the world. Rather, the world needs Africa. And on this note, we will end today's program on Love Be Afrobeat Music Talk Radio. And the program was today's Africa. And the topic was ECOWAS and Niger, which way forward? And I've already answered the question, which way forward is due to the fact that, and the simple answer is that it's up to the people of Niger to decide what is good for them. It's up to the people of Niger to decide what is good for them. No African country should to sleep in bed, to be in the same bed with countries that have exploited the countries. So I would say Africa still has leadership crisis. And out of this whole mess, we hope for the best. We hope that Africa will come out smelling roses, like roses, folks. Africa is not poor, but Africans are poor. And once the black man is capable of making mistakes, we've made mistakes, yes. And we can correct it, or correct them ourselves. And we'll see you in 7 days. Thanks for watching us on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube. Well, join us again. And you know what? Download our apps on the Google Play and Apple Store and hook up with us, because this is one place that you can get news about our tradition, our cultures, our history, our music. This is a one-stop shop, and it's Love Be Afrobeat Music Talk Radio. We are in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. We are here 24/7. And until we meet again in 7 days, take care of yourselves and each other. Thank you, JB, once again, and bye-bye. I